Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Oscar Buzz. Trevor here. I'm joined by Thomas, and today we're doing something fun. So this is 16 queer films that you should watch. So we have each selected 7 films. There is 2 that we've both agreed to put on, but in reality, there's quite a few that I think both of us would agree to put
I
on.
mean, that is to say, like, these are sort of ones that are slightly lesser known. I think yours are probably lesser known than mine in there, but we've
Like
not got your Moonlights, your Call Me by Your Names, all of those
Portrait of a
kind of
Lady on
films.
Fire.
Those ones,
Like
exactly. We all know that we should, you all know that you should
we all know
definitely
that we
do those
should have
films.
and probably already have watched those.
Exactly.
Now, if for some reason you haven't seen like Moonlight or Call Me by Your Name or Portrait of a Lady on Fire, like
Exactly.
by all means watch those, please, as soon as possible. But yeah, this is to highlight some more underrepresented queer cinema. I think so. I think we typically try to stay under 100K logs on Letterboxd at least.
I did not look at that. But
Okay, well, I tried to stay under 100K logs only.
Then that's fine. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, this was initially intended to be done during like Pride Month back in when is Pride Month?
June.
June is when Pride Month. Listen,
June.
Pride Month is like, in reality, Pride Month is just an excuse for companies
Pride Month is all year. Pride Month is
Pride
all
Month
year.
is all. It's
We are
Pride year,
still
everybody.
exactly.
It's Pride Month is its own. It's just an
It
excuse
doesn't
for
matter when
companies
this
to
video is
sell
meant to come out.
rainbow shit to people and then immediately take it
Yeah.
off the month afterwards and use that
Sorry.
money to donate to conservative politicians. But I think it is
I
still.
realized I was interrupting your anti-capitalist.
I know
spiel
my
there, sorry.
anti-capitalist monologue with your
Yeah,
it's Pride year.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just
But
trying to bring some
anyways,
positivity here, but you have to crush it. This is meant to be a happy video.
but listen, I think it's this stuff doesn't just have to happen during Pride Month. It is Pride year. It can happen whenever. It's be
Exactly.
gay whenever the fuck you want. And we are both queers who like cinema, so
Indeed.
we are obviously the only people that can do this.
Why is that a relevant point? Surely that can be cut out. That is not needed.
I'm not cutting this.
You're not editing any of this. Okay.
I'm not editing any. I'm lazy as fuck. Okay. Let's get started. And we'll start with one of your choices that, I mean, it's a 10 out of 10 movie for me as well. So
I mean, you were the one that put me onto this one, Beau Travail, obviously, and it's pretty widely regarded as like in the top 10 films of all time, just as like a staple place in it. And like, honestly, couldn't agree more. This is one of those films that just blows you away. And it's one of those films like Evil Does Not Exist. When we talked about that, it was about that. We want to rewatch it and get more from the film. I've only seen this film once, and already I feel so like just intrigued to go and rewatch it and build that sort of understanding of everything that Danes is going through here, because there's so much at play, so many nuances in the character relationships that just don't make sense, and then they start to make sense over the course of the film. And it's that kind of puzzle film that just really I love, and I'm glad that there was an outlet for that could present these queer themes in a military setting, which I think is such an interesting place to examine these queer ideas.
Yeah, I mean, it's everything that The Inspection wants it to be, and I don't even think The Inspection is a bad film, but like
I quite enjoyed it.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad film. I think The Inspection is a decent film, but it confronts toxic masculinity in a way that doesn't feel like it's confronting toxic masculinity, but more so just addressing that idea as is. It feels like a very natural examination of just humanity in a broad sense, but because it paints its stroke so broad, you're really able to kind of look around within it, right? You got this like big swooshing blue, but then you can find all the little textures within it, and I think that's what makes it so special. Like, it's if any film deserves to be called like a tone poem, it's this. It genuinely feels like poetry in the film language. I think Claire Denis is just a master the way that her camera almost objectifies the soldiers, and places them, in a way where it almost feels like they're sticking out of the frame, and they feel out of place, and every character looks like they're uncomfortable in their surrounding, but then you have this almost like unifying feeling of uncomfortability that brings these soldiers together in interesting ways. Like it's about like repression and isolation. It's about colonialism. It's a very political film. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a perfect film. It's a 10 out of 10 for me.
Pretty
So
much, yeah. And I think that tone thing is just really important in what is making like fairly slow build up really. Like it's quite slow, it's quite a difficult film to get into, but with that tone you're sort of drawn in the whole time, and once you are drawn in, you really start engaging with it and get a lot out of it, I feel. So yeah, completely agreed. Almost
yeah, no, for sure. Like it's there's a specific shot of like a letter that's being written that cross dissolves onto water. And I still like I think about that specific cross dissolve on a regular basis. Also this heavy visual influence on one of the best films ever made, After Sun.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say that as well. You can feel the influence that this film has had on future films.
Yeah.
It just feels monumental in that regard.
Yeah.
Like it's got that reputation for a reason.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, as you mentioned, it's top 10 Sight and Sound. Like it's
Exactly.
yeah. I guess we didn't really mention what the film is about, but it's about French
I mean, we
soldiers in
mentioned
Africa.
soldiers and gay. Yeah, we mentioned most
Gay
of it.
soldiers in Africa,
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
I just look at the poster. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. My choice. My first choice on this list is Born in Flames by Lizzie Borden. It's a film from 1983. And it's kind of this dystopian, I guess you could call it. It takes place in a future New York at the time, which would be the mid 90s. And it's about a world in which a social democracy has been implemented, but essentially, if a social democracy is only established and created within the bourgeois class, then there still isn't any, social relation from government down to proletariat. And it's about basically a group of lesbian black women who lead a socialist revolt against this oppressive bourgeois government. And if you heard all of those words, I think you understand why this is one of my favorite films
I
ever.
tell you what, you did a good job explaining that, because the film is a lot more complicated when you watch it.
It's very complex, yeah.
Yeah, you've done a good job of surmising the general beats that you need to
Yeah.
know in terms of the premise. But
Yeah. It's a lot of film in 80 minutes. I can
much
see.
so.
I think you felt it was doing a bit too much.
Yeah. I wasn't completely in love with it, but I think there is so much to respect within it. Just the way that the story is crafted, the way you're slowly introduced to the world.
Mm.
And just the sort of blending of docufiction and
Yeah,
narrative
it plays
fiction.
with
Just
docufiction where it's almost like a
exactly.
fictional docufiction in that it's
Yeah.
taking like it's repurposing footage from like actual like protests and street revolts against police and everything like that, and repurposing that within this context. It feels quite similar to the way in which Werner Herzog he has this documentary. I'm blanking on the name. Lessons of Darkness is the name of the film, and that it uses like footage of like the oil crisis in like Kuwait, but then like recontextualize it with like the sci-fi type monologue over the top that completely transforms the images into like this otherworldly scale. And I think that this film does something similar, but on a more like grounded level, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it takes elements from both docufiction and narrative fiction, I'd say. I don't know if it takes the best elements from both, but either way, when combined, it does create something very new, which I think I appreciated when watching it. It felt fresh, even however many years after it's been made. It still
Yeah, I mean,
feels
no,
like it
we're
does
it's
have
this is a
something to say.
40-plus-year-old movie, but
Exactly. It still feels
feels
relevant.
very yeah, it still feels very relevant, for better or worse. I mean, for worse, but this film probably shouldn't still be relevant, but
No.
it is still very, very relevant, very politically charged cinema. So I'm obviously all for it. Also, Catherine Bigelow acts in this randomly before her like breakthrough in directing, which I just think is kind of random and fun.
Yeah. For sure.
But yeah, no, I absolutely love this film. If it seems vaguely interesting, I would check it out. Next we have one of your choices, which is BPM, beats per minute, or also 120 beats per minute is another name.
Yes, that's the name that I would, usually use for it. But yeah, this is just a fairly small scale French. I don't remember why I was put onto this one. I genuinely think I was just scrolling through Netflix one day and just at a whim put it on. And it's
Netflix
one of those kind of
promoting woke, promoting
exact Well, I said exactly before you actually made your point there. That was wrong of me. I should have waited. But yes, either way, this is one of those sort of just sleeper finds that you just find and fall in love with. It's so, I think it was the emotion just that emanates from this, and just through the performances, I think they really just shine and they're given the room to breathe. And they're able to have those big moments that you do get quite emotional for. And it is just sometimes with films, can you deliver a visceral reaction? Is that
Yeah.
what this film was trying to do? Yes. And did it work for me? Yes. Therefore, I just think it is brilliant. I think it's brilliant in exactly what it wants to be. It's found its lane and it's having fun there, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, fun isn't necessarily a word that I would use to
No.
describe this film.
No, but it does still have a
It has moments of
surprising
light.
amount of life and colour
Yeah.
to it, which again, that's something else I appreciated, which reminded me a bit of It's a Sin in a way, which is a similar sort of mini-series by our studio.
Yeah.
You've probably heard of it. It's I'm speaking to the audience there. I know you've heard of it.
Yeah.
But where you're allowed to get these colourful moments and moments to breathe in and all this trauma, which I think is so important.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So yeah, it's it's dealing with young group of AIDS activists in Paris in the 1990s, and obviously very heavy, but the way it throws you in immediately with so much energy, like right into a protest, and then it kind of builds the narrative. You're jumping a bit non-linearly throughout a lot of the first and some of the second act. I quite like this. I don't think I loved it as much as you did. I felt like it was a bit overlong, and the direction kind of felt a bit cold to me in places and keeping me at arm's length. But even so, I still think that the ending really, really hits.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
and it hits fucking hard. Like I still think that the film works. Even if I have some qualms, it's more than worth sitting through some moments that didn't entirely work just to get to that payoff in the end. And also, I mean, Adele Haenel, I think people know how much I love Portrait of a Lady on Fire. I think it's one of the best films ever made. Maybe the best film ever made, so always happy to see her in anything. So
Sure.
yeah, no. All right. My next choice is going to be J'ai tu Elle, a film which you have not seen.
This is the one film on this list, yes, that I have not
Yep.
seen. So take the reins.
All right, this is early Chantal Ackerman. This is very, very early in her career. This is pre-Jean Dielman. I believe she'd only done Hotel Monterey was her only other major feature at this point. But basically, it's starring herself, and it's about a woman who has just broken up with her girlfriend. Chantal Ackerman, if you didn't know, is a real life lesbian. We found one in the wild. But it's I think partially self autobiographical, and it's really told in three parts. We start out where she's just kind of depressed and laying around in her room, just refusing to do anything. There's an extended shot where she just kind of sits on the floor and is like eating. She has this bag of sugar and is just eating spoonfuls of sugar. And it is there's so many Letterboxd reviews that's just the most relatable thing I've ever seen, which I'm concerned, but go off. But yeah, so we kind of start in that space, and then she finally gets the courage to head out, and then she hitchhikes with this trucker, and they have this, this is about 30 minutes or so, and they have this really interesting dynamic and kind of uncomfortable conversation about like gender and gender roles in society and everything. And it's, it interacts with the first section of the film, also setting up the second section, and all three of these sections are really in conversation with each other, and build and take away from each other in really interesting ways. And then the final section, we see her reunite with her girlfriend, and I'll spoil it. The movie's 40, 50 years old at this point. And also, this is more so a film, like a lot of Ackerman's work, that it really isn't about narrative. It's really just about the feeling of being in the film and the way that Ackerman communicates to try and put you in the character's mindset, whoever the character may be. And essentially the film just ends with 15 minutes of her and her girlfriend fucking. And if there is ever, I've never seen a more baller fucking directorial move than just having you fucking your girlfriend for 15 minutes at the end. And that's why Chantal Ackerman's the GOAT. This I know it's a really strange film, especially put in context between Hotel Monterey and Jean Dielman. She did this only a year before Jean Dielman, and it's I think it's her weakest of the her big three of this News from Home and Jean Dielman. Even so, I still think it's a 10 out of 10 because I know it has that very distinct Aquaman thing where it puts you in such a strange mindset where you feel like nothing matters really, and everything feels detached and kind of boring, but it's kind of bringing you along, and it always gives you just enough to kind of hold on to out the back end of the trailer, right? And you're just kind of able to hold on, and you want to hold on because you want to keep on engaging with this space because it's not really a space that a film has ever put you in before, whether you like it or not. So I don't know, it has that very distinct Ackerman quality, and it's lesbian sex. It's cool.
There you go. What's my next one?
Next one for you is Breakfast on Pluto.
Breakfast on Pluto, yes. And this one, I tell you what, so this is starring Cillian Murphy
Mhm.
as this sort of
I've often been told when I had darker hair that I look like Cillian Murphy in this film.
in this film. Yes, yeah, no, I can see that. But yeah, it's set during the backdrop of the Irish Troubles. So you've got this sort of historical setting, and it's just about him. What is the name of what is her name?
Kitty, I think.
Kitty, that's it. But yeah, it's just sort of a sort of episodic adventure following her as she gets into different scrapes and all of that kind of thing. And it's not the deepest thing in the world. It's not the most competent thing I've seen, even from Neil Jordan. But there is, again, like I said, there's this essence of fun with it that even though it is set to the backdrop of the Irish Troubles, it is allows for her to just sort of shine in this world, and the space really opens up just to showcase her. And I really think the testament to this film is that I did not notice it was Cillian Murphy at all in this role.
Yeah,
Like, I
sure.
think he completely brings this character to life in such a fragile but such a endearing way that I think you just can't help but become really attached to her, and then the journey she gets on. So yeah, not
Yeah.
J2EL, but still something I think really does showcase its star as its lead and showcase a queer character that is always very important to do.
Yeah, I also think for 2005, it is surprisingly like not offensive in its
Yes,
depiction
yeah,
of a trans character. It doesn't, play on like overblown, over the top stereotypes. Like it feels quite natural to the character and in the way that they've constructed Kitty as a character throughout the film. And yeah, I mean it's quite simplistic. It didn't like hit me in any meaningful way, but it's just like it's quite fun. Like it is
exactly.
just a very joyful film. Also the costumes are incredible. I would like
Yeah,
all of the outfits. But like, yeah, it's unapologetically trans, and it feels very comfortable being that, which is quite nice, especially for a mid 2000s film, because I think there's even quite a few films now that often feel like they have to kind of hide it or cover it or something like that, and it
yeah.
isn't just allowed to be, which I think is really nice about this film.
And especially, can I say, Neil Jordan coming off the back of The Crying Game,
Yeah,
which has some terrible trans representation.
yeah,
So Neil Jordan really saved himself
redeemed
with this
himself.
one. He
Yeah,
redeemed himself here. So, you know,
it's just all the Irish people. Like Ken
yes,
Murphy, Brendan Gleeson, Liam Neeson, like that's
yeah,
all of
that's
them,
basically Ireland. Yeah,
the whole
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Um, all right, my next one is Paris is Burning, documentary here. Also quite a few of these I watched for a queer cinema class, which is probably the best class that I've ever taken. Amazing. So this was directed by Jenny Livingston. It was done over the course of nearly a decade, really, and it is this bold, visceral portrait of the drag ball scene in New York and all of the different houses, the extravaganza, Venus, all these different places that make up this competition of drag and voguing and this entire queer subculture in the area made up of gay people, trans people, right? And it's only like what, an hour 10, hour
Oh,
20,
it's not long. It's not long.
but it feels so big, and it feels like monumental, especially during the AIDS crisis. It deals with a lot of African American and Black characters, dealing with like the the racism, the intersectionality of racism, and transphobia and homophobia and all these different types of things, and it never. It has such momentum and energy that it feels like it never stops and slows down. While at the same time, there's so many little moments that you can remember and you can pick out. I think throughout the film, I don't know. This is just the type of film for me where I kind of can't believe that it exists and that this is like a real thing that has been captured on film that just gets to live forever.
Yeah, I think that is the beauty of the film. It really just does feel like a time capsule, and it's
Yeah,
captured a portrait of this moment. And I think that's obviously very important. And yeah, it's so easily done as well. It's not like it's not like it ever lays out its intentions very bare. Like it sort
yeah.
of just exists as this thing. Like you don't quite know what the filmmaker's trying to do
It's
with
purely
it.
just documenting, really.
Exactly, it's just capturing these different people wherever the sort of the interesting part of the story is, and I think there is something really admirable about that fact that there is no clear destination for this documentary. It genuinely does just feel like you've captured a photo and that's just it. So, definitely one of the best documentaries I've ever seen. There is one that kind of does it tells its story in a fairly similar way. Obviously very different ideas that I do just think is a slightly better version of this.
Sure.
But still, I think this is
Is it the film we're talking about later?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think the film we're talking about later is also a slightly better version of this, and it feels a bit more personal, but we'll get to that.
We'll get to that.
Regardless, though, this is still, I think it's like a top 5, top 3 documentary all time, for me at least. I think it's incredible. Next up for you is a recent film. We got Fire Island.
Yeah, so this one I sort of cheated because this one is probably fairly popular on Letterboxd.
Yeah.
But still, yes, I think enough people haven't seen
It actually hasn't hit 100K logs.
There you go, exactly. Everyone should go and see it. There's not much to talk about that hasn't already been said. I'm fairly sure we've probably talked about it on this channel before, but
Yeah.
I mean, just an amazingly funny romantic comedy. Like at its heart, it's just very funny, and that is all it is going for, really. And it's on Disney Plus, or
Hulu in America.
Hulu in America.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is really just a insert watch this film now kind of.
Yeah, no, it's just, I mean, even more so than something like Breakfast on Pluto, like it's just joyful. Like it is just
Exactly.
a fun watch. There's I think about the Marissa Tomei joke regularly.
Yeah.
I just say it
All
isn't.
of the side characters are just so lovable.
Yeah,
Like
but
all have such distinct personalities that are very quickly established.
yeah, no, for sure. I mean, in like Joel Kim Booster, Bone Yang anchor it really well. Andrew On is a really interesting filmmaker. Made Driveways, which is another it's quite a good film. Also has a film upcoming that's going to star Bowen Yang, Kelly Marie Tran, Lily Gladstone, and Joan Chen, which seems quite interesting, called The Wedding Banquet. But yeah, no, again, there isn't that much to say about this. It's just joyful and very gay.
Yeah.
What more? All right. My next choice is Pink Flamingos.
Yeah, I'll let you take the lead
I made Thomas watch this one.
Yeah, I did.
A very different film than Fire Island. This is
very much so.
I got it sitting right here. John Waters with the Pink Flamingo. You always got to have one of these sitting next to you at all times. He watches over me. It's like Elf on the Shelf, but it's John Waters.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's it is just filth, right? It is the entire premise of the film is filth. It's about the filthiest person alive, which is Divine, a drag queen, who is playing theirself, I think in a lot of ways, also known as Babs Johnson. And she's a underground Baltimore criminal, and going up against these other two people, Connie and Raymond Marble, who all want to take the title, claim their stake as the filthiest people alive, who just happen to be in Baltimore with this underground filth tabloid. And it is a crime film, I think you could expose, but it's really just about trying to create the most disgusting and uncomfortable premises possible and extract comedy from them. And I think it's incredible. There's shit eating, there's chicken killing. It is not something to watch for the faint of heart. I saw this in a group projected on a screen in a community college classroom for that queer cinema class. I don't know how my teacher got permission from the school to play this, but he did, and it's great. It has one of my favorite lines made in cinema history, which is "Kill everyone now, condone first-degree murder, advocate cannibalism, eat shit. Filth are my politics. Filth is my life." And yeah, for me, this is a joyful film. I think that this film is
That
incredibly
is
fun.
we need to unpack that statement at some point.
It's just it is a fun time.
What?
It is so incredibly fun and unapologetically and boldly itself. It is radical art, and I adore every second.
Yeah, I found it to be a bit much personally. But no, I mean, I appreciated the fact that I'd seen a few clips and stuff and
Mhm.
sort of got an image in my head of what this film was. I appreciated the fact that that wasn't true, and I was surprised by the film. At all times, I was quite surprised by what the film was doing. It's just not my kind
I
of
wish I
vibe.
could have seen you watch this. I really
Yeah.
wish I could have seen you watch this.
Well, the comedy sort of isn't my style. It's very abrasive and very blunt, and I tend to prefer films that I can decide how much I engage with them. I can bring myself to the film. This one, I was like, "Whoa, I'm just being beaten over the head with whatever
Yeah,
this
it
film is."
grabs you and fucking
And
chokes
if
you
that's
in
what you're into, then sure. I think this film does.
no
I mean, it
kidding.
clearly has, and it worked for a great number of people, and it is considered a classic and a staple of queer cinema, which
And I
I
do think it's
understand.
important to the
Exactly. I
queer
do think
canon,
it
yeah.
is important because it is so bold and it is so just refreshing in the weirdest sense of the word. But yeah, I mean, not for me personally. Not for me.
I think, yeah, we all for any viewers, returning viewers of the channel,
Yeah.
who've seen us talk, like, at least once before, I think we all knew that this wasn't gonna be Thomas's thing.
No.
But I felt like you had to see it, it's
Yeah.
it's it's
I'm happy for having seen it. Definitely.
yeah. Yeah. Um, into another, trends film, very different again. We got Joyland, another recent film.
Yeah, this is much more up my street. This is much
Yeah.
more up my street, this
I
one.
also
Yeah,
love
and
this film for the record. I
yeah,
think it's incredible.
for sure. And this was really a grower in my mind. Like the first time I watched it, I appreciated it. I really liked it, but it didn't necessarily stick with me. But over the next coming weeks, it really just started to work its way into my brain. And it has just magical sort of humanity to it where like you just totally get invested in this world. And partially that is due to how well the setting is established. I think setting is a really important part of this film, especially when dealing with like cultural expectations and how the world around you would perceive it. You need to actually see that world around you. And I think Joyland does a great job of presenting that. And it allows for all of the interpersonal drama between the characters to just feel so grounded, feel so real. And the exploration of just this subculture, this aspect of Pakistani culture that is just I've never seen before. And I just think it's fascinating to get a view inside this world.
Yeah, no, I think often the word, like, important is overused, but I think that this is one of the most important films of the 2020 so far. It's
Yeah.
one that I need to rewatch. I've still only seen it the one time, and it's one where I thought it was really, really good, but I feel like on a rewatch, I can get even more out of it.
Yeah, it's
Um,
one that's just kept climbing in my brain as
yeah,
well.
yeah. Like, yeah, it's really stuck in my mind, and I don't know, I need to kinda satisfy that, you know,
Like,
uh,
especially some of the
yeah.
visual imagery as well, with just the sort of neon
Mhm.
lights hitting them. It's that kind of visual imagery that just gets burnt into your brain, and when you can attach that to such a visceral story, I think it really just makes it a perfect cocktail.
For sure, yeah, yeah. Also Alina Khan, like,
Oh,
one of the
yeah.
best performances of that year. I mean, give her a fucking Oscar. Like,
If not my favorite supporting performance of 2023, it's up there.
yeah, it's really up
I
there
don't remember exactly what, but it's in contention. It is in contention.
for sure, for sure. Yeah, but no, fantastic film. Definitely watch it. Another, I think you call it transcoded film in Tomboy by Celine Sciamma. So as mentioned, I think that Portrait of a Lady on Fire is like a top 2, top 3 film of all time. I think is one of the best films ever made. Very big Celine Sciamma fan. And before Portrait, and then most recently Petite Maman, she had what she called her girlhood trilogy, which is Water Lilies, Tomboy, and Girlhood. And I really could have picked any of them, but I went with Tomboy because it's I think an interesting point in Siama's filmography because it explores more of gender rather than sexuality. And I think it's really interesting just to see how her kind of philosophy when it comes to the world in film and everything reflects on these ideas. So you have this John who they move into a new town for summer holiday, right? And their name's Laura, and they're mistaken by a boy, and they decide to pass themselves off as Mikhail. And it is just I find films that deal with like the perspective of a child really fascinating, and I think that Siama does this as well fantastically in Petite Maman. There's plenty of Playground from a couple years ago I thought was also great, but I think it's really interesting as an exploration of kind of the first encounter of gender as an idea, because it is just really a made up thing. Obviously, it exists and we all live within it. So it is real in that sense, and that we all have to engage with it because it has been this created construct of a thing, but it is a created construct of a thing. And, kids aren't really born with the idea of gender. They are taught what gender is, and they're taught how to perform their gender roles. And seeing this first kind of challenge of gender roles and what gender is and what it means to this child very directly from their perspective, I think is really fascinating and really kind of touchingly and beautifully explored in a quite short film.
Definitely, I would echo pretty much everything you said. That I do think out of the 3 Siam films I've seen, this is probably the weakest.
I agree. I
Just
prefer
because,
Portrait in
yeah,
particular. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Just because I think even though they're slight, very tender, very intimate stories, they were able to find sort of a bit larger of a scope than I think this film really. It's not really aiming for it, but
Mm,
it just means that it doesn't quite have that resonance that those 2 films do. But as you say, I think it is a brilliantly sweet exploration of this. I think it's got this weird sense of like stress throughout
yeah.
that I think really does hit, and it really does work and allows you to. It's just about furthering that child perspective, I guess, which I think
Right. And kind of
no
the
matter,
stress of feeling like
yeah.
the first time you have to perform a gender
Mm.
role, really.
Yeah, it's not even just in the stress of, "Oh, will they find out or will they
Yeah.
not?" It's more in the fact that, like, their entire existence at that point is just a show, and it becomes very real.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, I think there is a lot to really appreciate and delve
Yeah,
into
no,
this
it
film.
has a really nice internality, which I think is quite unique for films specifically about children, which often never go beyond the surface level. And I think Siama really goes to great lengths, but also keeps it quite subtle in the way that she builds out the internality of this character. And I think the idea of identity and performance and image and everything is something that's echoed throughout so much of trans cinema. Like, so it's something I'd love to see Siama return to a film similar to this at some point later in her career. Now that she's matured a bit as a filmmaker, and I think is obviously a better filmmaker. But I mean, it's you with a lot of trans cinema, you're dealing with a lot of the same ideas and themes, and just seeing how they're interpreted. I mean, but for both of us, the best film of the year is I Saw the TV Glow, which deals very directly with that stress of performance and identity and self-image. So, yeah, no, I think this film's really great. Um, on to you. You got Tangerine.
Tangerine,
More
and back
trans.
on to a brilliant Christmas film, which
It
was
is.
actually, I mean, it was the first time I watched it. I just thought, like, that is a Christmas film. Apparently, let's watch
Yep.
it. Maybe not the best idea for December 23rd as you're trying to get into the Christmas spirit, but an undeniably brilliant film nonetheless. I would actually favor this over the Florida Project in terms of Sean Brady projects I've seen.
I think it's my favorite. Yeah,
I
I
think
think
it
it
is my
is.
favorite, yeah.
Yeah.
And because it's like it's got this gimmick that it's filmed on an iPhone 5 or whatever exactly it was.
Yeah.
I don't remember. But you never feel the gimmick. It just feels like such a natural part of this world and such a natural way of telling this story. Like it is quite a sort of this person really wants to be famous, and like that's kind of like they just want to have the attention. And
Yeah.
therefore the camera being so intimate, the camera being so sort of amateur, it gives this feeling that that they are being observed, which I think perfectly in keeps with everything that character is trying to do. And it's like so funny. I think
Mhm.
there's like genuine laugh out moments.
I
Scared
still
to think
there's
about it.
still I think about the scene regularly where it's the Armenian cab driver and he's trying to pick up like a prostitute on the street
Mm.
and it's a cis woman and he's like, oh, pull down your print, pull down your print, and then he's like, you have a vagina? Get the fuck out of my car.
Yeah, yeah. No,
So
it just
incredible.
Baker just like is able to convey this world so
Yeah.
effortlessly and so confident, even though it's one of his earliest ones. I don't know exactly which his earliest one is, but it's
Yeah.
one of his earlier
I think
works.
it's
And the fact that
Takeout
he is
before this.
so confident, and the film is so confident within its own identity at this stage, and I think that is just amazing to watch. And yeah, as you say, just so funny and enjoyable for.
Yeah, and it creates this world that really hasn't been explored really in film. And I also think to kind of go back, like this type of thing doesn't happen without like a Pink Flamingos, like in this kind of like
No,
dirty, grimy underworld that's also kind of touching. Like this film is also, pretty sweet and touching, and you know, like it balances, I think, really, really well in a lot of ways, but it still has that kind of, you know, dirt and grime to it, I think, in a lot of ways, which it makes it feel so distinct. Also that entire kind of ending sequence with where they're all in that, like, I think it's like a bakery or something, and everybody just converges on this one space. It is one of the best types of those scenes. I don't even know really what the word is for it, but just everybody in the film all comes together and it just becomes a big shouting match.
yeah.
So yeah, no, great
Because
film.
that's the other thing. I don't know how much of this film was improvised, how much of it was
Yeah,
actual written dialogue, but I don't want to know, to be honest, because it all feels so like all of the dialogue, I think in particular, is really what makes this film shine. Just in the fact that all of it sounds so real and improvised, and yeah, it just makes for brilliant watching.
yeah, no. Also a great spit or swallow joke also towards the end of the film, which I also think about regularly.
Yeah.
Um, anyways, uh, my next choice is The Watermelon Woman, which is by Cheryl Dunye. It was the first like mainstream or like studio produced feature by a lesbian African American woman. Obviously, lesbian implied woman. Anyways, but it's a docufiction film that kind of slowly reveals itself to you as docufiction. It doesn't immediately reveal what the film is doing in a broader sense, and it really hones in on this very specific idea of Cheryl Junior, similar to something like J2LL, where she's playing herself in a lot of ways, and it is scripted. She's working with Guinevere Turner, who's an icon of the underground queer cinema, stuff like Go Fish and everything. But it's she works at like this video store, and she's trying to find a specific actress from the 1930s who's known for doing like mammy roles and the stereotypical roles that were given to black women at the time, that won Oscars with Gone with the Wind, right? And it becomes this really interesting interrogation of identity, and it really feels real. Like this entire thing is constructed and it is made up, but it does feel like you're following a real person who is searching for this one specific actress that will make them feel somehow connected in some way. And it honestly reminds me a lot of that Babylon quote from Gene Smart, from that monologue talking about actors living on far beyond, and how you'll continue to make connections with people even past when you're gone and everything like that. So I don't know. I think it's really boldly meta modern, specifically for a film in the 1990s that interrogates, especially as the first film directed by an out Black lesbian. I think it takes, itself being that and then interrogates the entire past that led to that point in a really fascinating way.
Yep, I mean, for me, it's the type of film that I think would be an aid of sort of if you did like an 8-week course on it or something like that, and just
Yeah,
really unpacked all of it. I think it's the perfect film for that kind of experience, just because it is so complex.
it's very,
Um,
yeah,
but despite that, I think it's not that hard to decipher the sort of general ideas that are going on
yeah.
for a first watch. So it's not like it's inaccessible. It's just
It's like actually quite
there are
fun, I think.
exactly. I think that is what really makes it different, and the fact that you sort of always a line is blurred between documentary and narrative. The fact that
Yeah.
you can't really place it means you're not really pressured to place it anyway. You can sort of just take it at face value and take it as it is.
Hmm.
And so yeah, I think it's like it is very important for a reason. And
Hmm.
I just think, as I say, I could do with like hour-long lectures on it to
Yeah,
really sort
yeah.
of appreciate everything going on.
And I think, I mean, because it's doing so much, like, it's also, I think, just examining it in the context of this, like, meta modern wave that we have going on right now. Like, this really feels kind of quietly at the forefront of a lot of it. It's also incredibly influential. Like, there's just a film that I think is one of the best documentaries of the year that came out of Sundance called Seeking Mavis Beacon, which is very directly influenced by this and is very much like almost like an internet take on this sort of concept and idea. That I think is quite good. It's being distributed by Neon. Definitely check it out. But yeah, no, I mean, this is a film that if we wanted to, we could probably have a full hour-long conversation just unpacking everything. Like, there's a fascinating scene with Camille Paglia, who is a interesting figure in film criticism and philosophy that I think explores ideas of race in that way, race and sexuality. So it's a lot of cinema again in 85 minutes, but I say it never feels overbearing, which I think is really a
For
testament to
sure.
the project.
For sure.
I feel like I rambled about that for way too long. On to your choice. We got
Yes,
Weekend.
Weekend. So this is very much a precursor, slightly lesser version of All of Us Strangers. But hey, as you know, with All of Us Strangers, if it's slightly
But
lesser, it's
hey,
still
okay, come
probably
on.
hmm? Hey.
But
That
hey,
was the jokes write themselves.
wow.
But anyway, yes, it still is incredible just for like Hayes' direction, I think is so masterfully tender, and he's able to capture the real sort of tenderness in life. But I haven't seen from many other directors. It is very much taking nods from the Before trilogy, or really before Sunrise, I guess.
Yeah, it
It,
wasn't a
most
trilogy at this point.
specifically.
I think it's only the first two.
That is true as well. That is true as well. But again, like if you're mixing the sort of thematic exploration of All of Us Strangers and stuff with Before Sunrise, even if it's slightly lesser version of both of them,
Yeah,
it is still a really great experience. I don't know what the actor has gone on to do, the lead actor. I
really
don't even know
nothing.
his name. Exactly. Which I think is a shame,
Yeah,
but he could be one of those types that is just so well suited to that specific role. Like
I think he's
it's
in a lot of stuff
less of
on
a performance
stage
thing.
more so than film.
Maybe, but either way, he is so perfect in that role that you really do just fall in love with him, and then you only get to spend a weekend with him, and it's fairly sad at the end.
Yeah.
So but it's definitely worth a watch if you were a fan of All of Us Strangers, if you're a fan of the Before trilogy. If you like those films, I would check out Weekend as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in a similar way to the Before trilogy, it really, like, I think it's impossible for characters to be people, right? You can't bring in all the complexities of a real person and condense it within, an hour and a half. But like, this is a film that feels pretty close. In the way that it creates the universality of humanity through such a specific lens, where it just hones in on a few specific aspects and specifics of the way that we function in society and in relation to other people, and it builds those out in such a nuanced way that it feels like you're watching a real person, and it never lets the scope and the gaze of the film expand beyond what is specifically built out, and I think it its construction in the screenplay is so smart in that way, where it's kind of subtly like a masterclass in how to build a world. This is the film that I think you typically think of when it comes to world building, but in the way that it feels so confined while also being built out within that confined space. Yeah, I think it's really brilliant. So absolutely love it. Also, like the stuff with the tape recorder, just brilliant.
Yep.
Like just brilliant. So yeah. All right, choice for me. We mentioned I saw the TV Glow earlier. We have We're All Going to the World's Fair by Jane Schonbrun, which I think might even be better than TV Glow. I think they're doing different things, but the more I start with it, I really do.
Vehemently disagree, but again, I'll let you take the
Yeah, this is a film that really works for me. I think it understands the internet probably better than any film, really, and in the way that it understands the internet both formally and textually. And we're essentially following this character Casey, who they're obviously quite depressed and feeling very lonely in what seems to be a Midwestern type setting. And they decide to kind of take their loneliness and channel it all into this online massive online multiplayer role-playing type game, right? And it's a community, it's something to do, it's something to put your life into. And the film is very kind of swampy and miserable and puts you in this really uncomfortable headspace, to where it feels like absolutely nothing matters and it feels like you can attach to absolutely nothing. And then you have this other character come in who's an older man who's kind of manipulating. And I think it's important to note that this character is the only character that ever genders Casey and immediately makes that decision for them, and creates a lot of binary decision in their life in the way that they engage with the game and kind of merges the reality of the game with their real human life. It's evil eighth grade, it really. And I think it is a painful film to watch. For me, I relate to this very heavily as somebody who did go through periods of depression and being way too online and dealing with dysphoria and all of these types of things. Has a quote that has always stuck with me. It's like, I can feel myself leaving my body, like it's making me someone else. I think it is a really smart way to explore gender dysphoria in the intersection of internet culture. I get why it's not for everybody. I get why it's hard to get into and quite cold. But I think all of those elements really spoke to me and really work for me.
Yeah, and I'm not going to be too critical of it because I feel like this video is not the place for that. But I mean, personally, I didn't get that, and I just got a tone, and I didn't get anything else around that tone. But I think everything here has just been channeled into a much better project. I
Sure.
think it's
Also,
really
watch
well
I Saw the
played.
TV Glow. They're very
Exactly.
close in my mind. I can't really pick a
Fair
favorite.
enough.
But
Fair enough. Whereas they're not quite as close in my mind.
yeah.
Not really a fan of this one, but
Yeah. I think that Jane Schonbrun is. I think they're one of the best filmmakers alive right now. I think they're one of the best filmmakers of
I think
2020s.
after I saw the TV Glow, I think, I'm very excited to see where their career goes.
Yeah,
And I
for sure.
hope it's not towards another one of these.
Okay.
Sorry, I wasn't gonna be critical. I wasn't gonna be critical.
All right, so now we have choices for both of us. We'll end on the film that we alluded to earlier, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna bring up Happy Together because we made this list. It was supposed to be 15 films, and then I rewatched this film and was like, why the fuck did we not put Happy Together on this list? And it's a film that I think both of us really love.
I think it's Wong Kar-wai's best film, and he's made some very good films. So
Yeah, I would agree. I think this is my favorite Wong Kar-wai. I have the full, you can't see it, but I have the full Criterion collection up that way. But yeah, it's about a gay couple from Hong Kong. They take a trip to Argentina, but then they drift apart. And I think the way that this thematically and really metaphorically understands like loss and separation and cultural identity, and it almost becomes through black and white and color this conversation between two cultures and two countries, and using place to represent cultural identity and how that connects and separates people. I mean, it's a very, very dense, complex film. It's both about sexuality in a smaller sense and telling this really intimate romance and breakup and romance again, while also dealing with these really broad issues. Like there's interpretations of this as just a metaphor between like Hong Kong and China, and
Yeah.
those relationships between those two as countries, which I think is really incredible. So yeah, no, so much to say.
Yes, I mean, for sure, and I think you hit the nail on the head with talking about the importance of place in this film. I think Wong Kar-wai just understands how to establish setting, and he does it throughout all his films. But I think this one in particular, because he's creating two settings, he's creating two very vastly different places. It just allows everything to sort of connect a lot better. I think because you're exploring the interplay, which is the most interesting part
Yeah.
of seeing these different worlds collide, as you say, and all beautifully mapped out on just sort of breaking apart and really getting back together, all just centered around this relationship. I think it's just an amazingly unified project in that sense, and one that also, yeah, like it explores issues around money as well, and how
Mhm.
wealth can impact on these sorts of cultural identity signature marks. So it's, as you say, it's so complex. There's so much to
Yeah,
talk about, so much
this
to
is
unpack.
another one where I think that we could have an hour-long conversation. Maybe we need to start a podcast, or I don't know, maybe we just do it on here where we talk about like a
Yes.
film like this for an hour, because I mean, there's so much to say, but I think and we mentioned this before with a few of these, but I think it's a testament to the film that it is so complex, and there is so much to say, but it never is pushing you away because of that. Like you're still very much able to get into the film and get invested in these two characters, and I think that's also because of just how beautifully shot this is. It's one of the
Mm.
most gorgeous looking films I've ever seen. It really invites you in.
You can
Um,
really tell that Wong Kar-wai works with the same people on every project by the
yes,
time you've got to here, because it just feels so natural and
it's
so
so
much like
perfectly calibrated.
clockwork.
Like everything is
Exactly.
correct down
It
to the color
feels
timing.
like clockwork in a way like Kubrick feels like clockwork,
Yeah,
where towards his sort of end of his career.
yeah.
Which obviously this isn't the end of his career, but I do think this is the peak of Wong Kar-wai and the best
Yeah.
we're possibly ever going to see from him.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. I mean, I hope he makes another movie. It's been too long. It's been
it's been
since
a
what,
while, yeah,
Grandmaster in
exactly.
2013. We're nearing
Yeah,
on. I mean, it's been over a decade at this point.
exactly.
So
So
yeah, need more Wong Kar-wai. But I mean, yeah, I like this is the film that really solidified him as one of the goats for me. Like it's yeah, stunning, absolutely stunning. All right, I'll let you take the lead on the last one. This was the first one that we put as a both of us choice. This is Tongues Untied by Marlon Riggs.
yeah, and so this was definitely the first sort of experimental documentary I'd ever seen, because I don't watch many
Yeah.
documentaries. Firstly, and then one of them I do watch are like the Oscar tipped ones, which aren't tongues untied. Let's just put it like that. To be gentle with them, they're not tongues untied. But the way this delivers information and the way this serves as a documentary, not in terms of giving you any information that you were last with, but it giving you a vibe and a tone and an atmosphere and a sense of community, whilst unpacking so many different themes this goes into about black men, about masculinity in general, um, just about queerness. It encompasses, I feel, an entire experience, which I'd never seen a documentary do. Like even those documentaries about like getting into the psychology of a subject, this gets into the psychology of a subject, but the subject is like far more broad than just one individual, I feel. So just
And it does it
an
in 55
amazing way.
minutes.
Yeah, that is it really
It's
55 minutes?
55 minutes. It's less than an hour.
Jesus.
Guys,
And
if
yeah.
you like watch this now, I think it's like on Internet Archive or something like that, or
Oh,
YouTube.
I definitely didn't watch it through Legal Me. It's just on the internet. Yeah, you
Yeah,
can be.
yeah.
There's probably a copy of it on YouTube. So after
Genuinely.
this, you'll
Just
get it.
Google this movie, watch it, please. It is a like it is a bullet train of like it grabs you immediately and it runs straight through it. But you know, it it allows moments for you to process things, and it incorporates like slam poetry. There's some incredible pieces of like, using poetry and, close-ups on like fingers and mouths, and right. And it almost is taking like a very like Maya Deren-esque approach and using like the body to explore, like the human body more than anything else, to explore theme and ideas in some cases. But then in other cases, it's an interview with somebody, or in some cases it's just
Like an
simply documenting a
explanation
parade.
video. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like
Like a how-to tutorial at one point it turns into.
yeah, it's a how-to on like how to
Yeah,
do like, the
yeah.
snaps, right? Like it is so many things, but despite being so fractured, that's the point. It is the point that it is this fractured view of reality, and that there are so many different experiences, but it is this unifying idea, this unifying intersectional idea, really, of race and gender and sexuality. And it is intense. Like I said, it grips you, and it runs through, and it is, abrasive in some points, while also being incredibly tender. And it is he uses experimentation to make this, like, so many big ideas and so many broad ideas so incredibly digestible, but he never sacrifices the vastness and the scope of what he's exploring. It's so personal while being so big and universal at the same time.
Well, yeah, I think a lot of what works about it is in its pacing because as you say, it is very abrasive. It can be very punchy at times, but it always gives you time to, as you say, sort of step back and just reflect a bit. And that encourages you to just be actively engaging with what is going on at the time because you are given moments to pause and to breathe and sort of understand exactly what is linking everything together. And I just think that is so special to have that in such a short film
Yeah.
to still understand the need to not just be firing all cylinders, especially for documentaries like this, to not just be completely, but allowing you to breathe and it all still feeling like this cohesive thing. So, yeah,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
a masterpiece in
I
documentary.
mean, I think it's one of the best. Like, it's a
I think it's
film
the
that,
best documentary I've ever seen.
yeah, no, it's the best documentary of all time. I think it's one of the best directed films I've ever seen. Like, I would genuinely probably put this in my top 10 films of all time. Yeah, I'm being dead ass. Like, it is it is truly up there for me. There's nothing else like this, and I don't think that there ever will
It
be
wouldn't. No.
anything else like this again. I mean, Marlon Riggs is a visionary. Like, I don't think that anybody has ever and will ever use the language of cinema to communicate ideas like this again, and to be able to break down such complex ideas and make you, rather than trying to tell you about them and explain them to you through words, he makes you feel them. And it is stunning to just sit there and watch a master at work. I mean, like, I'll also use this to just throw a recommendation to one of his other films, Black Ain't, which is, I mean, just as good. I think in a lot of ways. It was the final film that he made. He made it on his deathbed while he was dying of from AIDS and AIDS-related complications in '94, which is really sad. He was only in his mid-30s when he died, and he could have made so many other incredible films. Like, I mean, I would have loved to have seen was just other, queer movements in culture, and movements in Black culture and everything, how he would have responded to those, and incorporated those into his work through cinema. But Black Ain't is incredible. He deals with sexism and homophobia, and race, and all these types of things from his deathbed, and it becomes this meta thing where he's constructing it while also on his deathbed and speaking directly to camera from the hospital. Like, it is, I mean, I genuinely think like Marlon Riggs is probably one of the best filmmakers alive, and he's only made like two films, two features, really. So it's, yeah.
Sure.
I There's so many words that I could say.
Sure. Honestly, if I would leave you with one recommendation from this list that I gave you, it would probably be Tongues Untied.
Yeah, for me,
I think this is a good one to end on. Yeah,
yeah, I Tongues Untied, I think, is for me the best film that we've mentioned today.
quite possibly. Yeah.
So yeah, no, please watch it. But that's it. Those are 16 pieces of queer cinema that we think that you should watch. I think we had fun making these lists and talking about these things. If you're interested, or you want to see us do other topic videos like this, definitely let us know. Let us know what kind of topics you want to do, because we have fun doing this. Like talking about films that aren't just Oscar films coming out this year.
Exactly.
Because
Which we have a lot of those coming up though. So
we have a lot of those coming up, and
don't
we do
worry.
enjoy doing that. But
Yeah.
it's fun. Cinema didn't just start in 2020, right? There's even though you mentioned like 3 fucking 2020 movies in here, but whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
But there's plenty of great cinema. Cinema's been around for 100+ years, and it's fun to talk about all of it. So thank you everybody for watching this. Hopefully you take got at least some recommendation out of this. Can add something to your watch list. And yeah, anything else that you have to say?
I don't think so. I think that's
All
everything.
right, cool. It's Pride Year, in the words of Thomas.
Pride, yeah,
It's
exactly.
Pride Year, everybody. Pride the fuck up. All right, gotta stay prided. What's that Mark Wahlberg thing? Gotta stay prayed up. Gotta stay gayed up. Gotta stay gayed up, everybody. Thank you everybody for watching, and goodbye.